but there's this instantaneous feedback mechanism where it allows the business user to quickly react to anomalies that happen and allow the business user to take control.
Welcome everyone to the ECXO sessions. Today we have the final part of the trilogy about about journey orchestration, and Ray Gerber is back here with us. He represents Thunderhead, a company acquired by Medallia, and you have Bill Stikos here with us, so that's the reason I'm saying that. And the goal is to present Autonomous Journey Orchestration, the last part of this trilogy, as I mentioned. We have more events coming. We have an event that will be the practical closed-loop approach that changed the AI group CX, and this will be in April, and we're inviting all of you to participate. Our panelists today, let me first tell you about ECXO, I always forget this part. ECXO is an organization developed to educate and close the gaps between the different cultures here in Europe and around our region, and to close the gap between the maturity models in Europe especially, but we are open to everyone in the world through education. Our panelists today are, first is Joanna Carr. She is the CX consultant for Allegro in Norway. Okay, she's British, and she's also a founder member of the ECXO. And I am Ricardo, I'm the founder of the ECXO, and I'm also the MD of eGlobalis. And our main, and wait a second, I'm confused today. So let's talk first about how we are going to manage our Q&A. Joanna, I think you have something to say.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Very quickly, any questions that you have, please do write them in the chat, and I will pick these questions up and forward them to Ray at the end of this session. And any questions we don't answer, I will forward those to Ray, and we'll try and get back to you with the answers. So enjoy the tea session. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you, Joanna. And the presentation in 2 weeks will be available with the video inside the ECXO for you. Let me introduce you our main guest today. Our panelist, Ray Gerber, is the Chief Product Officer at Thunderhead, the leading company today in journey orchestration, based in the recent report by Forrester. Ray is a global leader in customer engagement technologies, with over 30 years of experience in building innovative technologies and solutions for enterprises. He has an extensive experience in customer relationship management, customer decision, and self-learning. So without further ado, Ray, the stage is yours. I will stop this sharing and just go for you. People, this is Ray.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Ricardo. Let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Can you guys see the right screen before I go?
Yeah, we are not in the first page. We have to return to the first.
Oh, I'll just start here because I think you did the introduction already. So trying to make up some time. So last session we had was a very practical session around journey orchestration in practice. So it was based on capabilities available in the marketplace today and how to best get value out of those. Today is more of a conceptual, longer-term discussion for us to consider why the concept of a journey orchestration, campaign management, A/B testing as it is today is maybe not sufficient for the times. So the topic goes around, conceptually, what is autonomous journey orchestration? How will that solve the problems that we have today? But I'm doing that in the light of us all knowing and being impressed by autonomous vehicles and self-driving vehicles. So I'm using the background of autonomous vehicles as a mechanism to identify the requirements and to create an alignment in terms of how we've seen successful autonomous vehicles, in how can we therefore use that same philosophy to deliver autonomous journey orchestration and get some of the own benefits, the same benefits that people get from driving driverless cars. So I'm going to go through 3 topics. Firstly, understand why we need to progress to this over time. And then stepping back and saying, so if we want to use and correlate autonomous journey orchestration with autonomous vehicles, what does it mean to be connected and autonomous? And then going in terms of conceptually, what are the requirements? What are the principles that you have to adhere to as you progress into autonomous journey orchestration? So first question is why? Why is what we have today not enough? And I think we all have a set of questions we ask ourselves every day. How will we harness the power of new technology? We see tremendous new technologies being released every day. We're seeing companies going public, companies like Snowflake, Snowstream, and then become very successful. And a lot of those new technologies are aimed at helping us extract the maximum value from the data we have: internal data, competitive data, customer data. And how can we then use that insights we get from the new technologies to expose and understand data to create compelling human-centered experiences, which will allow us to stay ahead, or at least keep up at a minimum with customer expectations. And we're doing all of that. We ask those questions every day because we want to be able to continuously create customer value. In the competitive space we are today, brands need to make sure that they continuously create value, that every interaction that a customer has with a brand needs to deliver value. Otherwise, there's another enticing competitor that is telling them that there's more value connecting with them than with your own brand. And when we look at, however, what customers' perception of value is, in the telco, there was a report, and they asked CMOs to assess this. If you look at the top 5 items that customers have perceived as value, is firstly efficient and accessible customer care and quick problem resolution, consistent, predictable experiences across all channels of engagement, operational excellence, reliability, uptime, and quality of service, simplified customer journey to subscribe and new services, and personalization of content plans and support programs. And I think we can all relate to those 5 topics, but it's not as easy as we think. Why? Because we have these continuous challenges, that is preventing us from very quickly changing the experiences we deliver and the personalizations we deliver and the service we deliver, because the customer's behavior is continuously changing and the expectations is continually changing based on market circumstances, based on competitors releasing new products or running new campaigns. So when we look at the things that are preventing us from delivering that value, it's a need to continually earning trust. We can't have a relationship without earning the trust of the customer. We need to understand the correct level of control. The old world of inside-out campaign management is now passé. It's not acceptable anymore. People are overshadowed with continuous emails based on understanding of an internal marketer of how they believe the customers want to experience. The inability to control external influences. What if your competitor suddenly creates a campaign? What if they suddenly drop their price? What if COVID happens? What if the war in Ukraine happens? So you don't have control over those, but you need the ability to continuously understand what is the impact of that on your customers and the expectations for you to engage with them. Fast changing behavior, I talked to privacy. How do you ensure that customers as they are getting more and more connected and using more devices, that they are comfortable with the amount of privacy and trust that you create by how you use their data to hopefully serve themselves better. And then level of connectedness beyond purchase. We're getting to a point where IoT devices are becoming more and more embedded in products. But brands don't today have the ability to understand and connect to those IoT devices to get an after-sales experience and insights of customers, if customers are actually achieving the expected value that they got when they started engaging with you as a brand. So when we look at how can we potentially as a brand overcome those challenges, there are 5 steps that we need to ensure that we are really good at. And the first one, we need to be connected to the customer wherever they are without ever missing one signal from the customer. Having an oversight of what they posted about your brand could influence maybe the wrong personalization that you deliver. Okay. Once we are connected and we have all these signals from customers across all channels all the time, we need to understand and be aware of the meaning of all of those interactions across all these devices and channels, and what that means over time, not just in the moment. And then we need to assess the current market circumstances, the environment inside the organization, outside the organization. What are the budgets that we have? What are the competitors doing? What are new product trends that are happening? And then we need to utilize the awareness of the customer plus the environmental assessment and use that to plan appropriately of how we're going to engage with the customer at this moment as they engage and connected with us, and then act appropriately. But the key thing, and that's where more the concept of autonomous orchestration comes in, is we need the ability to continuously and instantaneously do that. The ability to real time is nearly becoming not enough. I like to talk about instantaneous as the next step in real time. So we can't decide, sometimes we're going to do it, sometimes we're not. Therefore, we have to be continuous. Instantaneous means I need to be able to do this within a couple of milliseconds so I can make sure that the customer experience that he expects is satisfied while providing value to the brand as well. So when we look at that, we're saying, so is the answer possibly providing a journey orchestration environment where the focus is on 2 elements? The first one is on connectedness. How connected can we be? How deep can our connection be, at least from a channel perspective, but also how wide and how far can our connectedness be? How can we get to the point where we can start getting a deeper understanding of how customers are using our products after the sales cycle? We find that a lot of brands put a lot of effort in understanding the buying cycle of the customer, but they lack at making investment to appropriately understand if the customer, regardless of the good or the bad buying experience, what is their use experience? Are they appropriately satisfied? And are they achieving the expectations that they set out when they engage with a brand? And autonomously means the ability to provide a level of control to the business user, for them to understand where are they in the progression of building trust with the customer. Autonomous means the ability to be able to react very quickly to changing circumstances. And that's why this is so powerful in terms of its correlation to autonomous and driverless vehicles. When we look at those 2 areas, what does connected really means in terms of a connected and autonomous vehicle? I did a lot of research work. So connected vehicles, a nice paragraph is connected cars are part of the Internet of Things. So we see the word IoT is becoming the key for us in terms of a customer engagement. It's a phrase that refers to everyday items being connected to the Internet with the intention of making life easier. So that should be really our focus. We should only be connected to the customer and understand that connection because we're trying to improve the customer's life. Think of jobs to be done. How are we getting their jobs to be done? How are we delivering value to the customer? And a very key thing not to overlook is that ability for products to communicate with other products. How within a household can you use the concept of all the lunars within an autonomous vehicle being connected to the road signs? How can all of those interact with each other to make sure that this vehicle understands that it needs to get into the right lane because it's going to have to make a right turn? How does it automatically understand if a traffic signal is red, green, or orange, and how does it react to that traffic signal? So it's not just enough that we need to start looking at getting use information from our own products, but how can we start getting a better understanding of how that product is being used with other products within the house or outside of the house? When we look at autonomous vehicles, its autonomous car is a vehicle capable of sensing its environment and operating without human involvement. So there are two things there. Sensing its environment. It's just not enough for us to be able to think inside the box in terms of what is happening within our brand. What campaigns do we want to do? What new products do we have? We need to bring in the ability to understand the external environment. What are competitors doing? What is the economic situation? What is the global situation? And being able to make that part of the decision-making process so we can make a decision not just based on what's happening with the brand, but what's happening in the ecosystem that company and its customers operate within. Okay, a human passion is not required to take control of the vehicle at any time, nor is a human passion required to be present in the vehicle at all. So what we want to get to the point is, when we have built trust, how can we start progressing through the levels of automation, allowing a brand to start with a very manual process, but progress its way to the point where certain journeys are fully autonomous, while other journeys, as we understanding the behavior of the customer, we might need more of a hand and involvement on those ones. If we look at the stages of driving automation, I think this is very powerful when I think about the future in terms of autonomous journey orchestration. When you look at these 6 phases, from no automation, driver-assisted, partial automation, conditional automation, high automation, and full automation. And what we can see here is at every level of the step is there's some level of progression in terms of allowing, in this case, the driver, or in our world, the business user, to start sitting back and relaxing and observe, and being an observer as the system automates, it is automated and continuously assess and changes the circumstances and the decisions it makes based on the environment, the ecosystem, and the behavior of the customer, the passengers in the car, etc. If we look at the architecture of autonomous system, we can obviously see there that is focused on 4 different stages. Gather information from sensors, then filter and interpret and understand the meaning and the sensor of those data. We can obviously see how it's important to get to the point where that is done instantaneously. If the vehicle next to you has an abnormal behavior, the car needs to appropriately respond to it like we would as human beings. Safely choose the actions and then initiate the actions. And I'm not going to go through all the details because I'm not an autonomous vehicle expert, but I think you can see here the complexity of the ecosystem that enables an autonomous vehicle system. And I can tell you that we sometimes think that this is an electronic device, a digital device, but the complexity of what we deal with as marketers and e-commerce specialists and service specialists requires that we think about the complexities of the ecosystem and the solution that we need to solve in a very similar manner. And I have further a slide where I'm trying to duplicate and show you what the architecture of a autonomous system could be, which is very correlating to these 4 elements of architecture of autonomous vehicles. So if we take that as a background in terms of autonomous drivers, let's look a little bit in terms of what is autonomous journey orchestration and what does it need to be. But we can't look at this without understanding, in my mind, 7 key guiding principles that we have to take into consideration as we are developing and architecting autonomous journey orchestration. The first one is the breadth and the depth of connectedness. Okay, so for me, the key thing where I think companies relax is, and I wrote a blog post that's available on our website, is the ability to have a connectedness after the sales experience. Companies spend a tremendous amount of time and effort on understanding how is the customer acting, what is the friction in the buying cycle. Okay, but because we have not made the investments in trying to, where possible, add IoT devices to our products, we are lacking in understanding in terms of how we get information back about the usefulness of our products to that customer. Focused on individualization versus personalization. I think that's a key thing. We want to be able to understand every customer's behavior as an individual, and if we want an autonomous journey orchestration solution to see that customer as an individual and appropriately react to his individual circumstances, we can't expect 10 Teslas driving together for all to be considered and have the same behavior, because each of those have their own ecosystem of what's going on. It needs to be customer managed. We need to allow this AJO system to be able to react to what we learn about the customer expectations, that individual customer expectations, and let the customer's behavior drive the understanding of how they want to progress on their journey. Is it slow? Is it fast? Do they want to use multiple channels? Do they like going backwards and forwards in the journey? Or are they instantaneous buyers that come in and within 5 seconds they want to buy and have the product delivered within 2 days? Okay. Immediacy, react to change. We need to be able to very quickly understand, firstly, how an individual customer behavior is impacting the journey that they're on. But also we need to have the ability to understand the impact of cohorts of customers starting to behave differently than what they have behaved before. And how do we react to that? How do we react immediately to external environmental changes in terms of the impact that it has or could have on our customers' expectations and our customers' outcome? Prediction and prescription-based control. We need to start getting to the point where we can trust AI and machine learning to a point where we can allow the system to do its own experimentation and to learn from that, very much like we started trusting A/B testing, and with a blind eye started trusting A/B testing. How can we get to the point where we provide a solution to marketeers and to e-commerce specialists where they can feel comfortable that what comes out of the black box is not magic, but it's some level of the expectation control? And I think a key thing there is this concept of being able to understand and visualize anticipated customer experiences, so the business user can visualize that and understand and react to that, and where needed, provide control, because the outcomes is not what was expected. Deter bias. We all understand where we are today in terms of how do we make sure that such an autonomous system does not bring bias into the decision-making process. And then finally, last but not least, is the level of automation based on trust. We need to be able to understand what is the trust factor, what is the trust score we have with every customer or with every type of journey that we're on. And we need to appropriately allow the system to respond to the level of trust that you have with the individual customer or a group of customers. So if we then take the analogy of an autonomous vehicle, we know that autonomous vehicles have issues. There's a lot of guideline issues that has to happen on, and we know that the governments and the appropriate bodies are working through that. And I can see us getting to the point where within the brand, you need to think of, we are going to progress towards level 5 of full path-based automation, But what controls do we have as a brand as we progress through these stages to make sure that we have standards within the brand? When do we use level 5 versus when do we use level 3? Okay. But also the key thing for us is that autonomous journey orchestration vendors need to make sure that brands that want to progress would want to see proactively simulate the impact of moving from a level 2 to level 3 to level 4. So it's not just about the execution itself, but it's around the ecosystem around it to be able to understand and visualize the impact of progressing through these stages, but also at the same time, the value exchange. If I progress from a 4 to a 5, what is the value to my brand of doing that? At the same time, what is the value to my customers allowing me to progress from step 4 to 5? So I think a lot of companies will say we are in step 2. We do campaign automation. Okay, a lot of companies are in step 3. I think companies will say that for certain journeys we're in step 2. For others we're in step 3, depending on the use case and the environment and the products. Okay, and I think we need to continue to do that. So if we could go through levels 0, no automation, marketer performs all the tasks manually. A lot of companies would be in level 1, where it's content-based experimentation, very focused on the piece of content that is most appropriate and the system picking one. Then we get into the point where we start connecting activities together to start pre-planning and building a set of steps that mostly are impacted on customers behaving a certain way or customers not behaving a way. And then there was this massive progression from campaign automation to advanced automation, and that itself is a big step. And I think next best action technologies would become a lot more successful if there was a lot more focus on understanding and simulating and giving customers the ability to understand the possible next best action for a group of customers. Then we get into the point where journey step-based automation came in, where it was really taking the concept of next best action marketing and adding a journey approach to that, connecting next best actions and interactions to journeys, and then allowing next best action type capabilities to pick the next best action, but not necessarily based on the holistic outcome or the expected outcome of the journey, but more based on what is the expected and predicted response to one of multiple next best actions. And then we're getting into when we get into autonomous journey orchestration, it is where the system predicts the path as a whole towards an outcome, visualizes to the business user what those possible paths are, identifies the relevant engagements and personalization and visualizations given to the customer along the journey, and allowing the business user to therefore identify the level of control and make appropriate changes when needed. But when needed, sometimes just keep their hands off. Okay. When we look at machine learning models applicable to each stage, we obviously cannot do that without bringing AI and ML in. And I think we can see here that there needs to be a heavy progression from supervised learning into the concept of reinforcement learning, where, and you can all do your research there, this is a very, very powerful method of being able to take behavior over time and simulate and understand what could the possible set of steps be when you look at like a chess game in terms of, if the white moves this way, how do we expect the black to move? But all of this doesn't help looking at a chess game at one move at a time. We need to understand the overall strategy in terms of what is the combination of moves versus the combination of competitor moves that will allow you as a chess player to have a positive outcome in terms of getting to a checkmate situation. Okay. If we look at some of the key capabilities, drilling a little bit deeper into advanced journey orchestration, I'm trying to use and steal the terminology of autonomous vehicles. It's sensing, perception, plan, design, and actuate. And if we look at some of the key items, and this is more of a checklist for each of you to understand where are you today within your brand. Okay, what capabilities do you have from a technology perspective, from a management perspective, and from an access perspective? Is the ability to eliminate blind spots. And am I connected to my customer everywhere? What is the impact of missing a touch point or a channel, even for periods of time? How can you include IoT data where possible, not just IoT data of my own device, where I have the ability or product where I can embed IoT devices, but how can I get to the point where, how can we possibly get an understanding with the mission of the customer of other IoT products that maybe interact with mine, and I can utilize the combination of those, to be able to get a better outcome. Making the data available immediately. I think, CDPs was initially known as products that, the batch processing to get data from different data sources into a single place. I think a lot of the CDP vendors is standing up to the challenge of being able to get data more immediately into the data ecosystem and making that available for real-time decisioning. Okay, be cognizant of dynamic content. It's not just enough to be able to understand what is on a page of a website, but also be able to understand, how that the content is changing, and especially when we look at things like single-page apps. Okay, what is the impact of that, and what is the context of that changing dynamic content have on what we perceive the interest and the needs and the wants of the customer is, and then continually validate permissions with the customer. As you're progressing and getting more insights into the customer, you need to continue to go back to the customer to understand, for them to agree of the use of the data to their own benefit. If we look at perception, I think the key thing is what journey orchestration as a basic added is, how can I add journey context in real time to every interaction that happens? And how can it help me understand how am I progressing, regressing across journeys? Is the interaction instantiating the need for the start of a new journey? Okay. Also, as we are understanding journey status and the subsequent behavior, how can we utilize, in essence, journey analytics to understand moments that matter and moments that shatter? What sets of behaviors, not individual behavior, is causing what we call a moment that matter, a trigger point, or a moment that shatter, that means people are dropping out or dropping off journeys. Establish actively publish external influences. We need to be able to, for our decision-making ecosystem in the next step, we need to continually have the ability to understand what is happening in the marketplace as to competitors, as to the market conditions, and understand for those, in essence, translate those into machine learning features that help us understand what is the influences of those on specific outcomes and behaviors. And the key thing then is, how can we discover, using advanced technologies, emerging conversations that are happening outside of the brand? Okay, how can we understand and use technologies to understand that there is an evolution of people that are starting more about one topic that's applicable to you as a company, and how can you start bringing those in to be part of the decision-making process? So then we get into the key thing is, if I have data, if I understand what that data means, how can I quickly and instantaneously decide what to do with that customer while they are connected? Okay, and therefore the key here is maximizing the use of active learning. It's not just enough to be able to use machine learning, where you build a machine learning model, then overnight you make a list of predictions for 10,000 people. You need to be able to have an active learning environment where decisions are evaluated all the time and the models are retrained when needed all the time to actively and appropriately respond to very, very quickly changing internal, external circumstances, as well as behavioral changes. Okay? We need to use AI to detect those behavioral changes. That provides us input into the possible need for these machine learning models that provide predictions and prescriptions to be able to retrain. We need to embed experimentation. We cannot allow a system that does not do experimentation to run on its own, because only through experimentation that you have the ability to isolate and identify recommendations by the system that is not appropriate and relevant. Okay, and enable simulation-based control. I talked about that earlier. I think that's a key element of being able to understand. It's hardly difficult for me to use a GPS if the GPS does not have a visual interface that is going to tell me what my route is from point A to point B. Imagine a GPS where it just tells you every 2 seconds, turn right, turn left. With that, you have a visual understanding of what the left turn or the right turn will mean. Visualize route predictions. And I have a little bit of a simulation here in terms of what that could look like. So imagine you have a journey environment and you are creating a journey where you know you've identified a new product based on deep customer research that will provide customers with more value. So you start with an environment that's saying, what is my expected outcome that I'm trying to get? What is the value that I'm trying to deliver through the purchase stage to my customers? Then how do I engage in the different channels using the customer's preferred methods of interaction and their preferences to be able to initiate conversations with the customers about the awareness of this new product and the value that it has. And then the ability to understand how those customers that we engaged with 2 days ago, how are they progressing on those journeys? What is the most common behaviors that they have as they're progressing? But then key, where Autonomous Journey Orchestration comes in, is the ability to simulate based on past behaviors what the most probable paths will be for those customers, and being able to understand the key drop-off points where you will lose a lot of people along the journey, but be able to visualize and then have the ability to identify where the system, this AJO system, will start interacting and embedding it in the overall journey to be able to help customers achieve that outcome in a more frictionless manner, and being able to understand the effectiveness of certain next best actions. Being able to understand the combination of next best actions that might possibly be available and which ones will be valuable or not. And this is where control comes in at the business level, is the ability to understand and saying, okay, I can see my extended finance package is going to have a negative impact on progression towards the purchase cycle. What is that I can do as a brand to very quickly, proactively identify why did that not work in the past? Do I need to change the content? Do I need to create a new conversation? And being able to then proactively replace extended finance package with another next best conversation, and understand through machine learning the possible predictions of how that will impact outcomes. So you can see that predictions descriptions is not based on individual activities, but it's based on the combination of behaviors and the combination of the brand where relevant and appropriate, inject themselves into the conversation to help customers achieve the outcomes in a frictionless manner, and in a manner where those customers feel that they manage the journey themselves versus being harshly interrupted by the brand to push them to a point where they acquire the product. Okay. If we get to actuate, it's obviously we need to deliver to multiple personas simultaneously. We need to be able to respond to the customer, but if that means that I am aware that this customer that's interested in investment product also is managed by a wealth manager in the company, can I make the wealth manager aware of a customer that has a need based on their behaviors? Generate individualized content on demand. We need to be able to start using and engaging with CMS systems a lot more in a dynamic mechanism, and understand and embed the concept of A/B testing, which is focused on content, into the journey orchestration, because it's the combination of next best conversation plus, in essence, next best content that will deliver the best outcomes. Use behavioral preferences when determining communications channel. Again, that comes in. We need to do individualization, not personalization. We need to understand a specific customer's needs and wants as it relates to the channels of their choice. And very important, and that's where companies like Medallia comes in terms of considering sentiment and emotion when gathering content. How can we very quickly translate behaviors into sentiment and emotion and utilize those attributes that we discover at the individual customer level to appropriately deliver and generate content that's specific for a person with one sentiment and one emotion versus another person with a different sentiment and a different emotion, and then ensure reaction response to content is recorded. How can we quickly and immediately understand how the customer is reacting to that individualization, and being able to learn from that as well, not just from the customer's voluntary behaviors. Okay. So when we look at quickly at what the conceptual architecture of an autonomous orchestration system could be, obviously we have the four that are in parallel with that of an autonomous vehicle. So sensing, we need to be everywhere where the customer is. When we look at from a perception perspective, we need to be able to take that sensing data and partition that into interactions, product-related information, the impact of the profile of the customer itself, but also very importantly, bringing external influences as I discussed earlier. And then the key is to be able to use all of the information about the customers around their interactions, around their products, how they use the products they owned, but also their profile in terms of what do we know about them from an age perspective, from a demographics perspective, from a psychographics perspective, and fuse that to a single understanding of the customer holistically, and then utilize that to really getting to the point where we can start identifying behavioral cohorts and utilize those to do, before we do anything else, intent prediction. Is what is the combination of behaviors and product usage and profile attributes telling us about being able to identify the customer's intents, their wants and their needs, and then utilizing intent as a key input into the behavioral planning environment where we can select the journey, let the system do a route prediction, let the system predict what the next best conversation could be in the context of that predicted route, apply constraints, understand budgets internally and externally, understand demographic constraints based on industry policies, country policies, state-based policies, and then in essence build in real time an individualized orchestration plan for every customer and allow where needed for the business user to have the access and the ability to visualize that. And then finally, if you now have multiple orchestration plans for a single customer, is how do we use the concept of arbitration and prioritization for the system to select the most relevant piece of content to individualize that customer experience while they connect to the customer at this stage. And then finally is where do we then, what do we say, how do we present this, and when do we deliver this? Do we do it right now when we know the customer's out of the country, or do we deliver it in a method where they can access that information over time by sending an email or an SMS versus personalizing the content on an iPhone that has a very small screen resolution, okay? So we can see there's a lot of complexities of what we need to deal with, but I think that there's a lot of technology solutions that are slowly progressing towards the ability for brands to be able to have such an autonomous journey orchestration ecosystem to deliver value to the customer while delivering value to the brand. Some of the challenges we have to consider at a very high level is trust. Okay? How do we firstly not just build trust for the customers, but how do these technology vendors build trust and allow the business users to trust that this system that now is going to autonomously orchestrate, that it will do the things that it's expected to do? How do the business determine the level of control? When we look at the 5 phases of autonomous orchestration, How do we decide when can we progress from a level 4 to a level 5? Is it at the journey level? Is it at the corporate level? How do we embed experimentation within the journey? What is the ability for the business to respond to a level of customer intimacy? I think that's a key thing. A lot of brands are saying that we want to be customer-centric. But when you talk about what they need to do to truly act with customer centricity and customer intimacy, they're not really sure they know how to handle that. Now, that's not the system that will take care of that, but it's more the brand need to understand we are going to proactively understand we're going to have a more level of intimacy with our customers. Are we appropriately organized as a brand to respond to their customer intimacy? Privacy, especially related to semantic relations between customers, customer-owned products, and then I think a heightened demand for IoT to sense and perceive how customer intent is being satisfied. So connected and autonomous journey orchestration is really focused on two elements: a continuous and immediate understanding of the relationship with the customer, and then utilizing that understanding to continuously improving relationships by a self-adapting solution requiring minimal or no control where appropriate and where relevant. So some closing thoughts: fusing software design, advanced connectivity, and autonomous engagement is no longer the realm of concept and experiment. It's becoming a reality. And I think brands need to understand that and need to understand how they're going to react to that level of advanced connectivity. Connected and autonomous orchestration can transform what once was a physical in-store experiment of acquiring products in service to one that's increasingly becoming an always-on extension of consumers' lives, complete with an ever-expanding set of immersive experiences. Okay? I think we have to understand what is the impact of the metaverse, for example, on our brands and our products. Okay? And finally, as part of that process, connecting autonomous orchestration technologies can shift the value placed on customer engagement and turn it into a key component of corporate valuations. Because that, at the end of the day, is why a business is in business, is they want to ensure that they can increase their corporate valuation, but doing so by achieving it by fulfilling customer expectations and allowing customers to get the jobs done that they expect to get done by using the products and services provided by the brand or by the company. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to stop sharing now, and as Ricardo said, we'll make this deck available in 2 weeks. I have some additional text that is not displayed on the slides in the notes, and we'll see what's the best way to make that available to people when we share the presentation to people. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. There are some questions that have come here. I thought that I could maybe pick them up in regards to relevance to the presentation that you've just given, Ray. One of the first questions was, could you please explain again the difference between individualization and personalization?
Yeah, so personalization is a term that is used today when you personalize experiences based on segments of customers. Okay, and personalization is very much focused on using and limiting the data it uses to demographics and psychographics. Individualization is focused on the word that the next best action technologies, one-to-one marketing. Okay. I like to talk about one-to-one engagement, but it's really focusing on the individual customer. And the way that you focus on differentiating segments to individuals is by looking at behaviors, because you have a lot of customers that are on the same age, live in the same country, so therefore they can be in the same segment. It is when you start looking at the customer's preferences as they prefer to use the product, as they prefer to use the channels and devices, is when we really get to the point where that becomes an understanding of the individualized customers' preferences, needs, and wants as it relates to engagement, and being able to respond to that when you determine the next best conversation that will allow that customer in a journey. For some customers, it might mean adding friction into the journey. Some customers we know based on their preferences that they want to talk to customer service agent before they do a final purchase. When we look at in Europe, we had a customer that was a travel company, and when we realized was that the customers over a specific age never purchase online because they were just not willing to share their payment methods online. So they wanted to talk to a customer service agent. Okay. But it was interesting when you also further look at where the customers were situated. When they were in the big cities, even over that age, they were more willing to do purchases online. And so it's the ability to just understand all of that in saying, okay, so therefore Raymond lives in a certain area, he's interacted in a certain way before. The previous time that he purchased a cruise, a vacation, he called to make the purchase. How can I utilize that to say, okay, now I'm going to recommend a connection for Raymond to a customer service agent as the next step, rather than waiting for him to sit there for 2 days and not make the purchase.
Sorry, I'd muted then. It was my cat meowing. Okay, there was, thank you, Ray. Another question. A great question. Have you run AJO and compared it with traditional journey methods to see how it compares? A kind of A/B test of AJO against traditional methods.
Yeah. So in the sense of honesty, obviously, Thunderhead, I don't think any vendor has an autonomous journey orchestration solution. I would like to think that the work that I did with our machine learning teams, utilizing reinforcement learning. We did some tests. I can't specifically say what some of the results was. So I'm not going to lie and say, yes, I've done a test where one is 5% more effective than the other. I think, again, this is more of a focus of talking about where the industry needs to move to, rather than we've got something in place. But I can tell you that at Thunderhead, I've most probably spent 9 months intensely with a group of data scientists to understand all the elements required to support autonomous journey orchestration solution. And I can tell you it is quite complex, but that's the whole idea, is that you kind of want to get to the iceberg situation where you hide the complexity from the business user. They don't see what's under the water. They just see that piece that's above the water. But I think, again, that's why I try to correlate it to autonomous vehicles, because I think that we can understand, how over time, and there's still a level of trust that there needs to be done even for autonomous vehicles, how that will, allow businesses to be able to observe what is happening. But there's this instantaneous feedback mechanism where it allows the business user to quickly react to anomalies that happen and allow the business user to take control. I would presume and I would expect that you'll see improvements of anywhere from 15 to 25%. I mean, we see today, marketeers are very happy with a 2 to 3%, success rate on campaigns. Okay, so when you get it to 25% improvement, you may become going from 3% to 5%, which is, I think, still below. What about the 95% of the customers that are not purchasing? Why did they not purchase? And hopefully I can see adding, firstly, behavioral insights and do individualization. It will drastically improve that number. But then I think the second part is the continuous self-learning, but also allowing the business user to see the predicted paths that customers might go on and the impact that can have on customer experiences and business value.
Yeah. So this is the future, in other words.
Oh, it's definitely the future. Yeah. At least in my mind, I think it'll realize itself in different formats. We actually, about 3 years ago, when we had a very strong relationship with a very, very big CRM vendor, I spent about 6 months with them on them starting to use reinforcement learning to understand, how to improve, in essence, their engagement solution. So there's a lot of groundwork that has been done. I honestly think that a lot of companies are still coming to terms with what is journey orchestration and how that's different to campaign management, because unfortunately the marketplace is confused about journey orchestration versus campaigns. And I think that as they get to accepting journey orchestration and its differentiation to campaigns, they're going to start requiring the need for some of the elements that I defined as part of an autonomous journey orchestration, especially around path predictions and visibility in terms of what can happen.
Thank you, Ray. So we have one last question, and actually we've got another question that just popped in here. Do you have a feeling that using the term journey for describing experiences at very different levels, customer experience versus persona experience, creates confusion?
I'm not sure the way that I describe it creates confusion. I think it's the way that, unfortunately, the market and vendors adopted the term journeys that has created confusion. You know, if we go back to campaigns versus journeys, I think firstly that's one. You know, a campaign is a pre-planned steps by a business user of what they expect the customer to do. It's focused on the success and only tracking in the campaign steps. Journeys is focused on, regardless of the depth and breadth of the journey, it's focused on understanding the interactions the customer has voluntarily, plus the impact of the brand individualizing experiences and trying to alter those journeys and what that has based on the eventual outcome of the customer. So I think, you know, I think that's kind of the way I see about the two. I think, don't think about a journey as a full end-to-end buying cycle. I think you can have an onboarding journey. So I think in many ways, an onboarding business process is a journey. Okay, but you can just focus on where the concept of journey comes in is a business process says go to step A, then step B, then step C, then step D. Okay, yeah. It's not a campaign; it's internal business process. What people are overlooking is when that becomes a journey is when you start bringing customer interactions outside the context of the business process into and how that influences the behaviors within the process.
Ray, I have a question. Autonomous orchestration, we are talking always about mobility. So mobility will have many different things that are connected via IoT. We have shop floor, we have airplanes, we have so many things. Why you are only addressing mobility in terms of autonomous cars, yes, that's what you are talking about. And what's the market that you have outside there to grow this? Because there is a tremendous potential for many different sectors in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say that autonomous journey orchestration is only applicable to the automotive industry. I'm using autonomous vehicles because everyone is interested in understanding autonomous vehicle. I think, you know, all of us are drivers, so we understand when we get in the car, my experience driving manually, and we've seen and we're interested in how can my vehicle start being more in control when a set of circumstances happen outside of my control. And that's kind of where, you know, autonomous vehicles comes in, is be able to ensure that those anomalies that happens outside that can react immediately. So all I'm doing is I'm aligning the concepts of autonomous journey orchestration to the concept of anything autonomous. It could be a vehicle, it could be a plane, it could be anything else. All I'm doing is I would say, hopefully my audience all have an interest in autonomous vehicles. And therefore, when I create the correlation to the concepts applied into autonomous vehicle and how it could apply to that of journey orchestration, it's a correlation that everybody can understand with. We maybe have 1% of people on the call that's a pilot, okay? And they understand.
That's right.
So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm not saying that autonomous journeys is just applicable in the automotive industry.
All right.
Autonomous journey is applicable everywhere, you know. So.
Thank you so much.
Ray, Ricardo, we're 2 minutes over 3. We do have one last question. Should we make this our last question and then finish the session for today?
Has to be quick.
Yeah. How is data exchanged, and are real-time or near real-time personalized or campaigns feasible?
I would say campaigns are not feasible. I mean, before even it's real-time or near real-time. I think that the aspect of if real-time or near real-time is efficient, depends on the use case. You know, I think in some use cases, and based on individual customers, some customers might want that immediacy in terms of, reacting to individualization on their mobile device. But if we see that a customer never reacts to that individualized content within their mobile experience or the mobile app, but they react to an SMS or to an email after 5 every day, then we need to have the system efficiently understand the preferences of that customer and deliver the experiences where the customer wants to have those experiences.
Right.
But I would say a brand today can't be competitive if they don't have the ability to react in real time and personalize in real time. I think near real time is not even sufficient. So it's not about one versus the other. It is making sure you understand the appropriate of when to use real time, when to use near real time, when to use delayed, when to use 2-day delayed, and I think that's the key understanding that you have, that the system, very much like an autonomous vehicle, where you have to enable and understand what level of control do you give. That's where autonomous concepts comes in, because some journeys I want level 5, other journeys I want level 3.
Thank you, Ray. That was a
Very
good
welcome.
answer, of course. And thank you for today's tea session. I hope everybody has had a wonderful hour together with ECXO today. And if anybody here isn't a member already, then do join the community. Everybody is welcome. Ricardo, do you have any last words to say?
No, it was amazing session. Thank you so much, Ray. Thanks a lot, Joanna. And I hope to see you all inside the community or in your sessions. Thanks so much for everybody's time.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day,
Cheers.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Ray.